CBS News spoke with former Secretary of Defense Mark Esper as it was announced the warrant for Trump's Florida home would be unsealed. Esper confirmed that he is one of several Trump administration officials who has full-time security because of credible threats from Iran. He also discusses Trump's handling of classified information. As President Trump's defense secretary, was he respectful of classified information and the need to protect sources and methods?
Well, I never saw him outside of a classified space, if you will, talking about issues. So it's hard for me to comment on what he did or didn't do. So we need to learn more about what's behind this warrant that was served and what they're actually going after.
You've worked at the highest levels of an administration. On the issue of records, is there any ambiguity about what is required when you leave government office?
No, I don't think so. I mean, we all know that you have to protect records. I think there was maybe some ambiguity with regard to text messages, and I've spoken about that less than a week ago. That has the system caught up with technology to make sure that we protect text messages before phones and other devices are wiped clear and provided to the next person. So I think those things need updated. But look, if you've been in government, you understand the importance of protecting records. These are important for historical purposes, for a range of purposes.
This week, the Justice Department brought charges against an Iranian national in a murder-for-hire plot targeting the former National Security Advisor, John Bolton. Do you have Secret Service protection as a result of an ongoing threat from Iran?
Yes, I do have protection 24/7, both here in Virginia and when I travel. It's part of the job, if you will. But I give the FBI and the Department of Justice a lot of credit for what they've done. And in terms of protecting Ambassador Bolton, more importantly, though, is what will be the approach of the White House. And we had a good statement, I think, the other day from National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan about severe consequences if Iran should do something. In my view, it should be even stronger. Look, if they were to assassinate an American, or let alone an American official, to me, that's an act of war. And we should signal very clearly how serious this is. And before we sign any deal with them, certainly make sure that they reverse whatever actions they're taking and renounce them publicly.
Is there any question in your mind, based on what you've been briefed, that this ongoing threat from Iran is in retaliation for the assassination of General Soleimani?
Well, it's serious, incredible, and I think that is one of the reasons why, and there may be others, but that certainly is one reason.
As a military officer, you took an oath to protect the Constitution. Based on your experience serving in the Trump White House and the congressional testimony from the January 6th committee, do you believe Trump's actions crossed the line on January 6th?
I've said before, when you look at what happened at that time, he undermined the election for several weeks. He called people to come to D.C. on January 6th. He riled them up that morning and then failed to call them off. In my view, it was a dereliction of duty with regard to what he should do to safeguard our democracy and the peaceful transition of power.
This week, The New Yorker reported on a resignation letter that was drafted by the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, Mark Milley, but it was never sent. Did General Milley discuss the resignation letter with you?
You know, he discussed resigning with me. I talk about in the book, particularly on June 1st. We discussed it several times, but I never knew that he had a letter or had written a letter with regard to it. But what I read in that letter is consistent with things that he and I discussed in the past.
Did you draft a resignation letter in advance?
I had a framework letter prepared, I think as a lot of cabinet members did in this administration, in case we reached that point. And as I describe again in my memoir, I went back and forth constantly. But should I resign? What's the better thing to do with regard to serving my oath and putting country first? And it was something I wrestled with for the last 6, 7 months of my tenure.
On national security, should House Speaker Pelosi have gone to Taiwan?
If she wanted to go, she definitely should have gone. I think she made the right decision, and she sent a powerful signal to Beijing that we would not allow the Chinese Communist Party to dictate where American officials travel.
Did the White House take a firm enough position on the trip?
I don't think so. I mean, this kind of, the president made the comment about the military not thinking she should go. She, of course, I think came out in the last few days and said they never told her that. she comes out of this looking really strong and resolved, and the White House not so much. So I think dealing with autocratic regimes, particularly the Chinese Communist Party, in this new era of great power competition, when it's lining up that the democracies of the world have to stand firm against the autocracies of the world, it's very, very important that American leaders show principled resolve to face them down, because if not, we risk losing this century.
This current escalation by Beijing seems to be about much more than House Speaker Pelosi's trip. Is it time to rethink U.S. policy on China?
I've said that after 50 years, the one China policy has outlived its usefulness. It's no longer appropriate to the circumstances. And I think strategic ambiguity is no longer working as well. We need clarity, particularly given what China has been doing.
Two final questions on Afghanistan. It's a year since the U.S. withdrawal. How would you characterize the pullout?
Abysmal, embarrassing, just terrible for us reputationally. And I imagine if the Biden administration could do it all over again, they would do it differently and maybe reach different decisions. But it really hurt us on the stage, and may have even contributed to Putin's decision to invade Ukraine. Who knows? But it just did not make us look good, that's for sure.
What message was sent when the U.S. left behind Afghan translators, fixers, and special operators in Afghanistan?
Well, not just Afghans, but Americans. We left behind Americans, and we left behind Afghans with special immigrant visas. It just sent terrible messages about our willingness to stand next to our friends and allies. And look, I'm not one who believed we should stay there forever. My view was it was time to get out. But there was a smart way to get out and a not so smart way. I pushed back against President Trump when he wanted to exit the country in the fall of 2020 by Christmas. I sent him a classified memo. Some people think that contributed to my firing, but there are ways to do it and there are ways not to do it. And certainly one principle you have to abide by is to take care of your friends and partners.
The administration said this month's successful drone strike that took out the al-Qaeda leader in Kabul, Afghanistan, showed that this over-the-horizon strategy works. Are there limitations to the over-the-horizon strategy?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, nobody said it would never work. What was said and what was always briefed to me that it would be far more difficult. So, look, I give the intelligence community credit and the White House credit for doing it. It was a great operation, but that doesn't mean that it's easy. We actually need assets on the ground. We need to have the ability to react far more quickly. The issue isn't whether Taliban is hosting al-Qaeda. They clearly are. The question is, will we know if al-Qaeda is reforming in a way, planning and rehearsing and preparing and training, doing those things that they did prior to 9/11 to strike the United States? And that's where having informants on the ground, having assets closer by is all